you so much. So May 18th, 2023 was the day that I was going to become my own hero. It was the day that I was going to become the first Australian with multiple sclerosis to summit Mount Everest. May 17th, 2023 was the day that that dream derailed for me. I was diagnosed with MS. I was told in 2008, I was told I might have MS. I'd just had my third child, and it came as a shock for me as someone that loved the outdoors. I was sitting in a hot tub in Colorado looking up at the mountains, and I thought, if I get that confirmed diagnosis, I'm going to follow a lifelong dream and I'm going to learn how to mountaineer. And so that was my plan. I'd always idolised mountaineers, something about the weathered look on their faces that spoke to me of adventure and of excitement and the beautiful mountains, a place that these mountaineers lived within. And I read a lot of mountaineering stories, and I taught outdoor education. I told these stories to young people, thousands of young people, these people that I admired. And I eventually reached a point where I thought, it's time now. I need to stop telling these stories, and I need to become that person. I need to become my own hero in the story. In 2018, my diagnosis of MS was confirmed, and one of the impacts of that for me, which I'll just acknowledge here, is that my MS is entirely at the moment in my brain. It makes it quite hard to organise my thoughts, and it makes recall quite hard. So if I look at my notes a little bit more, that's just part of having that MS and trying to navigate that. Having been a mountain lover, that dream that I'd set out, I thought it's time to bring that dream to life. I went through a few different challenges in my life around that time, and I realised that one thing that was really important to me as a person and someone that loved being high up in these places was I had to find a way to live on top of the peaks in my life. Those lower places, those valleys of my life, I felt like I was at risk of spending too much time there. And so metaphorically, I wanted to head to those peaks. And the best way I could think of doing that was follow this dream that I'd said I was going to and actually head to actual peaks. In 2022, I had spent 2 months in Nepal learning how to mountaineer, and I had developed that desire to return and have a go at Mount Everest. On my way to preparing for Mount Everest, I think I felt quite a lot of pressure. I knew that only 2 other people with MS had ever summited Mount Everest, and only 1 other person had tried. So I set myself this goal, this lofty, lofty goal, that I was going to really have a real go. And what I hoped for was that no matter where I made it to on that mountain, if at any point MS did start to confine me to a wheelchair, I would forever be able to show up and look in the mirror, even from that wheelchair, and I would see a woman looking back at me, and that woman would be this amazing Everest climber. And so I set out. There's nothing easy about climbing Mount Everest. An expedition takes about 6 weeks, and throughout that journey you have to spend time acclimatising your body, so you head up and down and up and down and up and down the mountain over the course of those 6 weeks until you're at a point where you're actually really ready to make that final summit bid. For me, there's nothing easy about climbing to begin with for anyone. Climbing with MS, it's a very, very different experience, and I likened me heading out to have a go at climbing Everest to when I was studying outdoor education at university. I had a little old 2-wheel drive car, and I took that car everywhere that the 4-wheel drive should go. And heading out to climb Everest, I felt like these mountaineers, these people I'd admired, they were the 4-wheel drives of the mountains. And I was going out there as a little 2-wheel drive car to have a go at climbing the mountain. I faced challenges that were quite different to some of these other people that were climbing. My MS causes something called Ulthoff syndrome, and what that means is that when my body heats up, all of my symptoms start to come into play. And one of them that became very, very challenging for me was my bladder became nearly impossible to control, particularly during waking hours. And I would have lapses in my energy as soon as I got hot. So I would be climbing in a down suit, and then all of a sudden I'm trying to strip off every layer and get down to as little as I can be wearing and throwing snow on and peeing myself into an adult diaper all at the same time. So there's nothing glamorous for me about climbing Everest. It was an incredibly hard journey in that way. It's a challenge for everyone, but one of the things, I guess, when we live with an invisible illness is people don't see that. So the only way they're aware that you're really struggling is that you're explaining this. So having to explain this to my Nepalese Sherpa guide that was climbing with me, who, when we're sharing a tent one evening, I was having to change adult diapers, was pretty tough. My easiest way to explain it is if anyone has ever done hot yoga, which I haven't actually done, but I imagine for me, climbing felt like doing hot yoga in a down suit at 7,000 metres while you're peeing yourself and you're attached to a rope with people either side. So pretty easy. So for me, physically keeping up, being alongside these other climbers, and the company I went with was a company that's discerning about their climbers, and so they had very, very experienced climbers. It was quite an intimidating feeling to start out alongside these climbers, comparing my little two-wheel drive, peeing everywhere body to these other climbers. And I realised that the journey, though, is one of mental strength. And so that was what I held as my greatest gift, my greatest esteem in the mountains was I had this tenacity, this grit to just keep on going. Climbing up on my final summit bid, so we go camp 1, 2, 3, 4, and then your final summit day, and that takes about 7 days to that day. I developed a mantra, eye on the prize, Jen, eye on the prize. And that prize for me at the time was simply reaching my highest place and wherever I could get to. On the way up, really clear-minded, it didn't matter where I got to. As I got higher, just make it to Camp 2 at one point seemed an achievement, my own hero. Camp 3, my own hero. Camp 4, holy wow, Camp 4 is at 8,000 metres, you're entering the death zone. If I could make it to Camp 4 as a 51-year-old woman with MS, amazing. On the way from Camp 3 to Camp 4, I was climbing up, and when you're climbing, I've got a Jumar, I'm going slowly up the rope at 7,500 metres, and I saw an object higher up on the rope, and I couldn't make out what it was until I started getting closer and closer. And then I saw writing on the object, La Sportiva, a brand of mountaineering boots, and then I realised, as I saw the doubt, that it was a person lying across the slope. As I got closer, I realised that everyone was just going around this person. No one was stopping, and so that was quite hard for me to comprehend, and I realised very quickly that person had died. And I started crying. And at that point, the narrative that went through my mind was, can I keep going? Should I keep going? I'm a mother of children that need me. This person, they're Nepalese, they've died. They're living in the mountains. And I thought about going down. And then I made the decision, like all these other climbers that invested so much to keep going up. So I walked around this Sherpa and I continued on up. A friend asked me if I had summit fever at any point. And I could honestly say I don't think I did until that moment when I made the decision to keep going around, and I'd become so fixated. My hero before I left was going to be a woman that had tried her hardest and made it as far as she could up this mountain. I made it to 8,000 metres. It's incredible. But I reached a point at Camp 4, I had a very hard time, and I was told that my oxygen was not all available. And it ended up being that was as high as I made it to that point on Camp 4. This is a picture of me at Camp 4. I have never felt so desperately broken-hearted and despairing in my life. And I had invested 18 months training towards this, 120,000 Australian dollars through the help of family and supporters and other people. And I'd got in this little two-wheel drive body all the way to Camp 4 to be told I couldn't go on any further. I thought that I was going on this climb to meet my hero at the summit of Mount Everest, and nothing about this moment, this woman, spoke to me of a hero. This spoke to me of desperation and despair. And I think you can probably see why. It's a pretty challenge moment that I was facing. I came back down off the mountain and I came home to hugs and congratulations, and I didn't feel it. I felt ashamed that I hadn't made it. I felt that I'd gone to meet this woman and she was never there. And I realised that over the last few weeks of having to process this experience, that the hero that I needed to look for wasn't the one up on the mountain. I don't know if I was even looking for a hero. I needed to find something within myself. And the next few weeks, I spent time writing, thinking, talking with people. And this woman started to show up for me. And she told me that it was okay. She told me that she would hold my hand. She told me not to give up. Next time you're feeling like that, just get back up, brush yourself off, look for that peak that you promised yourself to live upon, and keep going back towards it. And she promised me that she was going to be there all the time to hold my hand through whatever it was that I went through. And no matter how hard things got, when I came down, to celebrate me, to celebrate my effort, to celebrate my achievement, and to just go again. I once joked about wanting to become a badass mountain mum. I joked about that on national television and went, oh my God, I said badass. And I'm really proud to say that that dream from a little girl to where I stand now is that I am a badass mountaineering mum. Thank you.